There's, of course, in all of our discussions, we see overlap with that and market development, but it has a different flavor to this thing, this economic thing we call health of the producer. Then product safety and quality. The integrity and transparency of the dairy value chain is safeguarded so as to ensure the optimal nutrition, quality, and safety of products. Based upon our discourses over the last 6 months, reviews of what you're currently measuring, and the outcomes of our indicator workshop at the members meeting in Chicago last month, the global criteria for, or the global indicator that we are anticipating implementing for rural economies is total payments to farmers by region, calculated simply as annual milk tons sold times the average annual price, milk price. So this allows you to average over, so it doesn't have to be farm level, but it can be average milk tons sold per farm, and then average price paid in a region to those farmers. And this allows you to protect the identity and sort of integrity of the information for a farm, but to give a sense over time of how a region is doing in terms of the value of the product produced at the farm level. And so this averaging approach, but still has sort of the details of yield and value emerged over many discussions, some of those as late as last week, which are as we're trying to parse this out. And so that's on the table for today's discussion. And then finally, product safety and quality. The indicator we've identified is number of public product recalls per year. It's a public product recalls, not product recalls. If they're, the notion being if they're recalled before they reach the public, then that is not a product safety and quality challenge. That is an internal success of the quality control program. It's those that make it out of the quality control program that are in spite of the quality control program that become a challenge. And so this becomes a way to measure over time this indicator. Just remind you that our next steps, we have member comment period for the next 30 days online for these global criteria, plus public discourse July 15th through October 15th, where we will receive comments from the public on these indicators. And then finally, remember that the baseline data for 2017 indicators is underway. We are collecting baseline data from members. So if you go to the website, the splash page is for those indicators. So with that, I'm going to back up to rural economies and open the floor for conversations, questions, discussion. This is always a little clunky on the phone. Don't be shy. And if you need to use the text elements on, if you want to just raise your hand or otherwise engage by typing, we'll be happy to read to the rest of the group here your comments or questions.
Anna Flyger here from Arla. I have a question regarding the recall. Yeah, I hope you can hear me. I don't know.
Yes, we can. It's always clunky to unmute and then mute. So yeah, I can actually see that you're talking. So, yes, please proceed.
That's good. You have to unmute me onto both the phone and computer, and that's a little bit confusing to me. Well, my question is this with the recalls. Is it only the recalls due to food safety issues? Because I think there is a difference between if you have like a recall, I don't know if that's a correct word, but with the food safety issues or just food quality. I mean, there could be something that is wrong with the product, but it's not like a food safety issue. It's just a quality thing. Have you discussed that?
You know, actually, we have not. To date, we've just been using the grand category of recall, which is inclusive of issues that are not associated. Now, that could be associated with a labeling problem. Peanuts got into a yogurt product that weren't intended and they weren't labeled or something like that, which is not a safety per se, but it could be an allergen issues, or they could be.
Yeah, but then it's a safety.
Yeah, that would be safety. You're right. Or it could be other, fruit got into something that wasn't labeled fruit, and that's a labeling issue. Or it could be something as simple as your company wasn't happy with that particular SKU and wants to recall it in order to replace it. You're right. I don't think we've discussed that. What is your sense? What do you think should be done? Should they be differentiated, or should they be part of this larger basket of product safety and quality indicators?
Well, yeah, I think I know there's a difference with these two different things. I just don't have the English word for it. But I definitely think we need to differentiate between them, because one is much more serious than the other.
So do you speak Swedish? What is what language would you use?
Yeah, and I don't remember the Swedish word either.
What's the Swedish word?
Actually, I don't remember the exact terms, and I don't know if there's anyone else speaks Swedish. I don't know if it will help.
Okay.
Hi there, it's Gary here. I can help from an English perspective, not that I'm fluent in Swedish, Anna. Normally the phrase that's used is public product recalls for food safety reasons. It's a phrase that we would normally use.
Okay, and if it's just like with more quality issue, it could be like the milk has not the exact right quality. Maybe you have forgot to what is the word for that then? Standardize it or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is Joe McMahon, Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. One concern I have with this is that developed markets are likely going to have more recalls because we have systems in place to track them. And I agree, there are many factors that have nothing to do with safety impact as well. But as better methods emerge, as other regions in the world also start coming up quickly with how to measure food safety and recalls, this is likely a number that will increase over time, not because food safety is going down, but because the quality control standards are improving around the world. So just so you know, I talked with our food safety folks about this, and they don't like this metric because they think even globally it's going to increase over time, not decrease, as a result of just better control on food safety.
Yeah, it's Brian here. If I can just make two comments. First one is, if you look at the criteria, it's product safety and quality. So just coming back to Anna's question there, I'm not saying I have the answer, but we are dealing with product safety and quality. And to Joe's point there, totally understand where you're coming from, Joe. We will put it, as we said on the call last night, we will put a narrative around this. We need to manage this. And this is not just a problem for this one. Somatic cell count's another one. As the indicator for animal care, because if we have a certain new region coming that has high somatic cell count, they could throw us right off. So we need to understand that whilst not exposing individual regions. So 2 points I'd like to add into the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, just another thought on this related to what you said. I mean, I don't know if like everyone has like procedures for recalls, but as you say, of course, the more detailed or better they get, the more you can catch as well. But I guess the first would also be that you have this kind of procedure in place, and I don't know, maybe everyone has it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it would be a challenge. We would have to bring in some experts across various regions to inform that. But I do like the concept of having an effective system in place to manage recalls, because I think that when you're talking about the global marketplace, that's a necessary first step that might be missing. And if you don't have a system in place to manage recalls, then you don't have recalls. Does that mean that you're better than another part of the world? And I know we don't pit region against region, but this data that we're going to get, I don't see how it's going to be that helpful as a sustainability metric.
This is Marty. What we will see, again, part of what we're doing here is we're experimenting with what we can collect and then how we can contextualize it and how we can drive improvement across the system. And so just like many of our metrics where we ask, do you have a plan, or have you implemented a plan? And many of our outside critics would look at that and say, well, that's not good enough, just asking if you have a plan. What are the outcomes that you're driving? Well, we got to start at the beginning. And then I would say this is very much starting at the beginning. Do you have a recall process? And if you don't have a recall, this is something that would emerge out of this, I hope, as we go through the process of evaluating, is what is would be a comparative analysis of the types of recall processes that we have and an evaluation of potential opportunities for improvement of those. We don't, as you say, we don't pit region against region, but we do learn from each other. And part of that learning, this is a vehicle for that learning. So I do think it could be valuable in that sense, because you put if the number of recalls are going up in particular regions, it's because the new program was implemented in that region. And that is a success, a huge success. And that's something, this is an opportunity to tell that story. That is, public safety and quality are improving, and this is an indicator of that. So this is not just up or down arrows, which is counterintuitive in some ways, but this is how we begin. I've not seen a better way to do this in my 25 plus years of trying to do this work.
This is so.
No,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say I agree with you, Marty. I think this is a good indicator, but it was just if we needed some additional information to explain if it maybe would go up, then you could maybe add something that you should also report if you have a recall system in place. And if you don't have that for a region or something, then that could explain why the figures would increase. So it was more like an additional thing maybe to explain the number.
Marty, just going back to what Joe said earlier, this might be shooting myself in the foot here, but other indicators that we've developed are, do you have a plan? Things like that. And as you say, we're on a journey, we're experimenting. I'm just wondering, is our starting point, looking at other indicators we've got, is our starting point finding out how many of our members who've prioritised this as a priority have a plan in place? Or is that part of the development process where they've said it's a priority, but their key action at the ground level is putting a plan in place? So is our starting point saying, of the members who prioritise product safety and quality, this percent have a process for managing product safety and quality in terms of recalls and things? I'm sorry, I'm sort of going back a step, but I've got some sympathy with what Joe was saying in terms of something that might be a little bit more meaningful as a starting point. And when we get to a particular threshold, we then start looking at the number of product recalls per year or something like that. I'll just throw that out there. I'm thinking out aloud a bit, sorry.
This would be going from 30,000 feet to 75,000 to 100,000 feet in terms of assessment, but we start where we start, and this is Marty again, and it may be the appropriate way to do this. And of course, if in our baseline assessment we find that everybody has a plan, then we can ask this question. And the other thing we can do is we can make this an A and a B. A, do you have a plan? B, if so, how many public recalls have you had in 2017? And so if you don't have a plan, then you don't have B. And so there's sort of that becomes a conditional question that we can certainly create because it's an easy thing to fill out on a form.
And that approach would help us manage the global environment the DSF's working in.
Yeah, Anna here again. I think that's a good idea, Martin. That was kind of what I meant also. But I also think that the product safety, I mean, it's the fundamental that's most important, I guess, because if we don't have the product quality or the product safety in place, I mean, then everything else we do doesn't really matter. So I think this may be the most important in one way.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that too, Anna. I mean, I think this is a good way to go, but with all these things, as people have already said, there's huge variability on the quality bit, but there shouldn't really be any variability on the product safety aspect of it.
All right, I think we have a pretty good alignment then. The question about safety versus quality recalls, I think Gary answered the language of that pretty clearly, that the recalls are very much safety oriented, but we could just leave them aggregated for now and then differentiate if it becomes necessary in the future. The reason that aggregation is valuable is because it goes to activity of the organization. And again, I don't want to differentiate them. I just go back to the, this is Marty, I don't want to weigh in on choosing that. You guys choose that. But I do want to suggest that we do have a strategic intent that includes safety and quality.
Yeah, but Marty, back to Joe's original point, you know, as things develop and quality systems become more sophisticated, then over time, recalls due to quality reasons are going to change, whereas reasons for product safety shouldn't.
We are listening. We're being heard. So, Brian, what I'm hearing very clearly from this group is the product safety as an explicit call out for the first iteration, and I think that's a pretty unambiguous set of recommendations. Is there anyone on the phone who opposes that?
Well, Anna here, I don't oppose, but I think it's fine with either. I just think it's important that we have the definition of what is product safety and product quality, because there is a difference when you have recalls. Yeah. So yes, to be clear what we report, everyone reports the same.
That's very well said. Anna, what's could become clear through all of our dialogues is that we will have to have for this process, we are going to have a sustainability guideline to support each indicator that defines the characteristics, the processes, this sort of framing that we're discussing for internal and external audiences, and in order to make so that folks can truly see the process as it's emerging. And also from a legitimacy standpoint, I want to make it clear that we don't have this process isn't designed so that the last person who speaks gets to make the rules. This is an open and transparent process, and whatever we propose will be available for further discussion online. And so don't feel like we're in any way going to override other groups, the people who are in Chicago, other groups' opinions. It's not the way this works. We're trying to take everybody's comments and put them into context and create a true group understanding, so we merge with consensus, and where consensus can't be achieved, then the decision is made and the board gets to make the ultimate decision. So that's our governance strategy. But I just want to reassure everyone that this isn't a process of sort of last person talking, ordering lunch for everybody. Any other comments on this indicator? So we will reframe this and distribute this and post it as, do you have a product safety assessment and recall plan, and number as A, and B, if so, number of product safety recalls in 2017. Those will be the indicator questions that we will be assessing, and we'll have a guideline that supports the language and definitions of those so that they're understood across communities. Moving on then, whoops. So rural economies, we've not had any discussion on this one yet. And let me tell you, Charlie and I have spent many hours in discussion with many of our members on this particular topic over the last month or so. Charlie more than me, but I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with this indicator.
I have a question, Brian, here. So looking at the formula for as it's calculated, if sure, this is fine if you're an aggregator, you can report this. So how do I report this as an individual company member of the DSF? Or I just want to understand the thinking behind how this is calculated. Or is this something that the DSF will calculate based on figures supplied or accessed in the different regions of the world? Because when you talk about getting an average milk price, if we've got several members in the same region who are independent members, not through an aggregator, how do they report? So I don't know whether you've had any discussions on that in Chicago or not.
Thank you, Brian. And Charlie, I'm going to ask you to chime in since you've been engaged in this conversation as well with many of our members. But I would say that, first of all, this is annual milk tons sold by a producer or by producer groups in a region times the annual milk price. So to answer your question, if you're a company and you have a group of 20 producers or 2,000 producers, you know how much you bought from them in the year. And you know how many farmers you have, and you just divide that, and you have the small farmers and the big farmers, and you may have different prices. You have an average price, and you have an average total, and you have a total amount purchased. Divide that by the number, and that gives you an average estimate of how much payback or payout to the farmers occurred, the producers occurred in that region. So I want to make it clear, this is annual milk tons sold by farmers to the processors, not processors in the supply chain. And because this is farmer economy that we're talking about. And then so the way this, it's not a perfect indicator in that it's going to skew, or it's going to reduce extremes. So you're going to have perhaps some producers who produce less milk and get less premium milk and get less price for whatever reason, and they're part of the average. But over time, as you baseline these over your reporting periods, it starts to show you trends, and that's the utility of it. And I'm guessing most organizations are already tracking those trends and have been doing for decades. So this should be nothing new. And I'm certain that co-ops are doing this. This is sort of the lifeblood of co-op in terms of information. So I'd like to hear what the rest of you think to Brian's question.
From my point of view, Marty, thank you. I was thinking at a different level. That's explained it to me. I can live with that. Thank you.
Okay, Anna here. Then just to test, I really understand it. It's just the total milk that Arla purchases from our farmers and the average price we pay to them. So that's really simple because we have one milk price, and then it's just that multiplied with the total milk we purchase, right?
That is correct. And as you're...
Good. That's a very easy indicator.
Yeah, but the question now is, do you think it's useful? So if you track that over a decade, and you start to see the price going up, that the total price, so because the annual milk tons sold, what I should add to this is by farm divided by a total number of farms. So that gets to, so what the number becomes then is money paid per farm on average. If you track that over time, there are a couple of things that can happen. You can have aggregation, where you have fewer farmers selling the same amount of milk. That's what's happened in the U.S. We have increased milk production, increased yield, fewer cows, fewer farmers. And so the actual amount of money a farm makes goes up because farms are getting bigger. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It goes back to the question about recalls. It's neither good nor bad. It is a measure of what's happening. And so that's why context, even in this simple indicator, is going to be key.
Yeah, Marty, I don't know if I quite understood the little bit you added in there about dividing by farmers. I mean, I think that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we had a good discussion about what different things we could do in a rural economy, and the simple, and this looks like a good one, is the flow of money into rural economies by the amount of money we pay to farmers.
So Gary, you'd say, but keep it by region then?
Yeah, I think so. I think it gets really complicated when you start trying to make it like an intensity of payment. I think it's the flow of money into regions is the thing here, isn't it?
Let's explore that for just a minute then, because it makes sense. It's a different indicator, and that is really what I'm reflecting here. And I think Charlie would probably correct me that what I'm reflecting here is probably more accurate. What's on the slide is probably more accurate than of what we discussed than what I said, because I may have veered off a little bit into the weeds with the by farmer.
Yeah, I think so, Marty. Yeah, just the conversations, just so everyone knows, I had conversations with Ernesto Reyes on this, and this was kind of his idea. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he would have left it at just milk produced by average price, and yeah.
So as Gary was saying, it's a regional flow assessment. Exactly. Now let's step back and ask the utility of that. We have 10 years of data of that globally by region, and we're seeing one region going up and one region going down. That, I presume, tells us that either the amount of milk sold or the value of the milk sold is increasing or decreasing in a region, and that does give us some indication of the relative vitality of that industry, of that sector in that region. I think that's reasonable. I think I'm answering your question in the affirmative, Gary.
Yeah, that's good, because it is written there as total payments to farmers by region, which I think is good. You know, for us as a co-op like Anna, this is something we do and effectively is public anyway. So we're happy with heading this direction. I think, Charlie, apology for not replying to your email with your detailed question, but you know, one of the interesting things is, and it's a level of complexity that I don't think we should let creep in here, is depending on where you source your data. Like Charlie got some data from IFCN, which was talking about payments in New Zealand, and it's expressed and calculated in a completely different way to the way that we pay our farmers. So in terms of sanity checking, it wasn't that easy, but in the end, Charlie, I can confirm that it looks roughly right. So,
okay.
But different units of measure, different calculations of payment. That's why I think keeping it at a higher level about total payments to farmers is a good place to go.
Yeah.
Very well. We have, I think, anyone disagree or want to add anything to that discussion? I think we have a convergence of opinion then. I won't say consensus yet. We still have public comment or internal comments and then public comments. And our process then will, of course, will be to make sure that all the public comments are available for internal review as well. From a process perspective, I'll go back to Brian to confirm this. Let's see. From a process perspective, we would like to start the baseline collection for 2017 or 2018 indicators as soon as they are approved. And the goal is to have them approved at the next board meeting. Is that correct, Brian?
Sorry, I'm on mute, talking away.
Yeah.
So we just need to get them right. We've got a timetable set. We would like to have them approved at our next board meeting, but not our next board meeting, but at our members meeting in later on in the year. So that's what the plan, yeah.
Just picking up a group chat there, Marty, there's a question in from Leo. How do we define a region? Is a region a country?
Ah, very good. Sorry, I missed that. I hoped I would see those chats. I did not see them. That's a very good question. We've defined those generally by the member organizations, self-defined region. We can define these in any way the membership desires. We can certainly aggregate, and we've had this discussion about aggregation a lot in 2017. I think ultimately we decided that country was the scale of ultimate aggregation, and we could have sub-country delineation where members desired it, but that regions are typically country level. And let me look to Brian for confirmation on that.
I think I preferred what you said firstly, was the defined by where the organisation's operating. We, as the DSF, tend not to work on a country level. We sort of break the world. When we started this DSF work, we break the world into 9 different regions. Whether we go more granular than that, I'm not sure yet. So maybe a country level is a good way to start, but we may not. What we might then do is aggregate countries, looking at the way we work. We want to try and, ideally, we'd like to have one number for the whole world, but based on discussions we've already had about changes or differentiation in numbers from year on year on the deltas, we may need to go into regional type explanations. So if we start at country level, just be aware that we're trying to get higher level than that.
There, I've got the chat open too. And it's, yeah, thank you, Leo, for that question. I think this, yeah, I do recall now the 9 regions are sort of our overall regions, but we also have membership representation, and that defines their reporting. But some organizations, and Joe's organization, for example, covers North American or U.S. producers, but it has, even within that, hundreds of sub-organizations represented within. So there's the question of aggregation. This is a global, high-level approach, and so the philosophy is always aggregate up, even to global when you can. So I think that's, is everybody comfortable with that? Because I think it's important to get that clearly understood. I don't think that's in our purview to change it, but we can certainly, if there's concerns, we can certainly raise those down the road.
Okay, Anna here. Immediately, I think I like the idea with 9 regions better than a country level, since we have, 7 countries, so that would be easier to just have it as one region there in ALA. But yeah, it's not any final answer, it's just immediate reaction.
Thank you, Anna.
But therein lies an issue. If you're going to treat ALA as one region, if I then go and try and aggregate that on our 9 different regions, where you're operating, Anna, would not all be in the same region. So that's where we come back to the country level. So I can then actually split it out. So if you understand what I mean.
So this may require,
I don't know which 9 regions it is, but yeah.
I think, Brian, I think what you're saying is that the aggregators and or the companies might need to report to you on a per country basis, but you would only actually report that externally at a higher aggregation level, right?
Thanks, Gary. You said it so well. Brilliant. Absolutely right.
Yeah, when you hear it, it sounds simple. But yeah, so that's what we've been discussing over time. And I again remind everyone that this is an experiment. And as we go through this process, it may be, there will certainly be some dissatisfaction with certain elements of it that we may have to re-explore. But the good news is the process is transparent, the process is fully engaged, and so the process of exploring will be open to everyone. So I think this is the legitimacy of the process is unquestionable. Do we have any other questions or comments? I don't want to belabor the point. It's the day is moving on. It is 40 minutes past the hour, but I do want to honor your time here. If you have any other questions or comments, please sound off now.
Just one quick one, Marty. Can you change the slide back to the rural economies slide? Yeah, when you put that up on the website for wider consultation, see that annual milk tons sold? I think you probably should say, just say annual milk tons from farmer, maybe, or something, just to avoid that confusion we had earlier on.
I think that's perfectly stated. Well done.
So Gary, that's okay. It's milk. So you said you had the word sold in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I think you need to get rid of the sold.
Yeah, it just makes it clear that we're talking about milk from the farmer, not milk entering the supply chain.
So, my query is, what about my antibiotic milk that I don't sell? Does that include that or not?
All right, so annual milk tons supplied. Times
okay. So it's what leaves the farm.
Produce by region, no?
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, I just want to clarify that. We can put that in the reporting guidelines. I just want to clarify that.
Very good comment. The details always start to matter, and that's why we'll have the guidelines.
Of course, I never had much antibiotic milk, did I?
Any other questions or comments?
Marty, if nobody else has got a question, I'd just like to make a comment, if I may.
You may.
I'd just like to publicly thank Charlie for his endeavours. Charlie finishes with us at the DSF next week. He's going on his next placement for his master's program. So I'd just like to, it's Charlie who's been driving this whole program. I'm just a bystander on these meetings. So it's really great to have had Charlie drive this through, work with Marty to get us to this point. And I'd just like to thank him for what he's done and thank you all for working with him and getting us to this point, because it's been fantastic and I appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thanks to Charlie for everything he's done on this call, because he's driven this whole process.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian, and yeah, thanks everyone everyone that's been on the calls and everyone I've dealt with through the few months here. You've all been very easy to deal with, and I've made some great contacts. So yeah, thanks a million. It's been great.
You certainly deserve one of Jameson's finest bottles. We just have to figure out how to get it to you.
I'm sure I can source one of them myself. I'll be okay on that front, I'd say.
Well, on that mixed emotion note, with an adieu to Charlie, and you have been incredible. It's been wonderful working with you, and I look forward to working with you in your next venture as well. I'd like to bring this very successful session to a close, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the internet.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks,
Charlie.
Thanks everyone. Thanks. Bye.
See ya.